Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Foltz Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Hunter Foltz, and I'm joined with Lilly, as always.
Hi, guys.
We are planning to get our episodes going a little bit more frequently, hopefully uploading every 10 to 14 days, and really working on growing our podcast over this next year. And we really want to bring you some episodes consistently and just keep the ball rolling. But this episode, we're going to dive deep into everything Austin, Texas marathon related. We just got back a few days ago from Austin, and we had an incredible weekend out there. So we are going to share everything that happened with you. I'm not going to dive much into the training or build up to this race. I'm going to save that for our next episode. So you can look forward to hearing all about the training and the build for this race. But we're going to fully focus on marathon weekend.
So before we get started, I did want to preface, we have our dog with us. So if you hear any squeaker toys or any funny noises, it's probably just Axel trying to join in on the podcast. When we get started, we really wanted to start by discussing our travel and stay. So we flew out early on Thursday the 13th. Hunter, do you want to talk about what we did after that?
Yeah, so we were originally supposed to fly out a little later, but some weather made us change our flights beforehand, which thankfully we were able to change those and we weren't delayed or canceled the day of. So we ended up flying out super early on Thursday and getting into Austin around 10 o'clock, I believe. And we picked up our rental car. Our hotel was right downtown Austin, like within, I'm going to say, 300 yards of the start line, actually, which was very convenient for us. So we went ahead and got some groceries. We stopped at H-E-B, got some things that we needed that we couldn't bring. And after that, we just kind of looked around a little bit, waited to check into our hotel for our check-in time, and got checked in and just kind of chilled because we were pretty tired after our early morning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a early morning start for us. Once we did get into Texas, the weather was quite cold. I was kind of expecting it to be a bit warmer that day. I think it was around 35, 40 degrees the day that we got there. And it didn't get much warmer until Saturday, actually.
Right. It was actually pretty windy, too, when we got in. It was about 40 degrees and windy, so it did not feel very warm, which was a little unusual. We were expecting it to be some warmer weather. So after we got checked in and settled in, we had dinner. We actually got pizza from a local shop there and just enjoyed our first evening in. Didn't do anything crazy. So we were finally settling in, and we were getting ready to go to the shakeout run on Friday morning. So the official Austin, Texas Marathon shakeout run is hosted by BPN and a couple other sponsors. I think, I believe Raw Dog Running Club was also a sponsor for the shakeout run. And they put together an awesome little event before the race. We had probably, I'm going to say 1,000 to 2,000, definitely over 1,000 people at this shakeout run. And BPN was there in a big way, just like throwing out hats and throwing out Go Gels and their new
Ready to drink
G1M Sports. If you guys don't know who BPN is, it's Bear Performance Nutrition. I've been taking their subs for well over a year now, and they are a vital key in my training and just everyday wellness.
Yeah, I think that has definitely been something that you've learned throughout your health and fitness journey is finding a good, reputable supplement company has truly led the way for you. BPN has a very great motto and company. I think everything about BPN is something that we're proud to support.
Yes, they have a very good culture at that company, and it's one of the only brands that makes you feel like you're a part of something. And I think that was one of the big reasons that we found ourselves in Austin for this race is because of all they do in the Austin area and how they support the Austin Marathon. And this shakeout run was just a prime example of that, bringing all these people together to push themselves, do hard things. Like, everybody at that shakeout round, I'm sure, was either running the half or the full marathon that weekend. And just being surrounded by all those people was inspiring in itself.
Absolutely.
So after the shakeout run was over, we just kind of headed back to the hotel for the day. We didn't really do a whole lot. We were just trying to stay off the feet and keep eating carbs. We were carb loading, obviously. Carb load started 3 days out from the race, but I'll dive into that a little bit later in the podcast. So Friday, like I said, we just kind of hung out, stayed off the feet, and then Saturday, I woke up not super early, but I wanted to get my morning run in like normal. So I did my final shakeout run, which was 2 miles, and I just did a couple loops around the hotel and just kind of stayed downtown, was kind of checking out the start line as they were setting things up and just shaking out the legs, giving them one final little spin before showtime on Sunday. So after the shakeout run, we had breakfast, again, trying to get the carbs in and just chilling out. And we were going to make our way over to the expo a little bit later because all the BPN athletes were going to be in the BPN booth and just showing up in a big way. So we wanted to kind of be a part of that and see what that was like. So we ended up going to Congress Ave, South Congress Ave, and we kind of just walked around a little bit and checked out some of the shops.
Yeah, there's a lot of small shops there. I'm sure they were all local businesses. There was some Western-inspired clothing stores. There were some boot and cowboy hat stores. There were local restaurants, and then classic big-name retailers had some shops there too. It was a really great experience to see kind of the culture of Austin and the little shops that make it thrive.
And one thing that we were surprised of is that even though the weather was not particularly great that morning, there was still so many people out and about just enjoying the shops, enjoying the city, and just, having a good time. It did end up warming up that day, actually, though. Saturday got up into the 70s. But the time we were out shopping and there was plenty of other people out, it was not the greatest of weather.
Mm-mm.
So after we got done stopping into a few shops, we made our way over to the expo about 11:30 noon.
Yeah, about then.
And we walked in, picked up our bib and our race shirts, and just started working our way through the expo. There was a lot of really good vendors there. It was definitely the biggest pre-race expo I've been to.
Mm-hmm.
I've only been to a handful because I've only done a handful of road races. But yeah, we enjoyed the expo. We saw, obviously Fleet Feet Austin was there, had a big booth. Kane Footwear was there, Tracksmith, all kinds of your name brands. They were there in a big way. And then obviously, stealing the expo by far was BPN's booth. They had a kind of like a diner type style booth, I would call it.
Diner, gas station. It was a fuel station. That's what it was.
Yeah.
The theme was fueling.
Yep, it was a fuel station. It was kind of like decked out like a convenience store.
Mm-hmm.
They had all their supplements in there for sale. They had some limited merchandise, shirts and things like that for sale. Mm-hmm. And we stood in line for a while. We were able to meet Nick Bear and some of the other athletes and just kind of interact with them. And they were super nice and super encouraging to everybody. Mm-hmm. They really left a positive impact on everybody that they encountered.
Mm-hmm.
It was very nice that BPN had all those athletes come in for the week and just show up in a big way.
Mm-hmm. I think it was really cool to see. Obviously, you look up to a lot of those people. I think it was really nice to meet them and get a personal sense for why they're driven and motivated to wake up and do hard work every day.
For sure. And I also think it's kind of like, you see people, you see like even professional athletes, like you look up to them, but then kind of when you get in their presence, you kind of just realize that they're just normal people.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's nothing extra special about them. They're just normal people, and they can relate to you and they can relate to your struggles because they go through the same things and they've been where you're at before. So I think that's really cool that they can relate back to the normal person per se.
I think that's probably something that BPN looks for in their team specifically. They want people that are going to be humble and support the business without letting fame get to their head.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. And you can definitely tell that every one of those athletes, including Nick himself, is a very, very humble.
Oh, 100%.
And they're always trying to do the best they can for the consumer and people who support their brand.
Do you want to name a couple of the people that we met?
We met, I'm trying to think of all of them. We met Luke Hopkins, Ian Fons. We met, I didn't talk to Nico. I don't know how to pronounce his last. I never know. I butcher his last name. But Nico was there. We didn't really talk to him much. We talked to Joey. Again, don't know how to pronounce his last name. It's weird. And then we met, Caitlin Miller was there.
And Lucy?
Lucy was there. I talked to Hella Sidibe for a little while. I didn't talk to him till after the race. I saw him after the race, and we talked. We had a good conversation, and they were just all really humble guys. Yeah, we met. Well, Tony's not an athlete. Tony works for them in partnerships, and he's a super cool guy, super chill. He's got a really good story too. If you follow him on Instagram, you've seen that before. A very inspiring weight loss journey, and he's running the New York Marathon. He had told me, so that's pretty cool. So after the expo was over, we really enjoyed it. We bought a couple shirts, some stickers from the expo, and we just, after I'd say about 2:00, we made our way back to the hotel and just stayed off our feet the rest of the day. We were preparing for race day, carbing up still, and just laying everything out and getting everything ready. So before we dive into the race, I'd like to talk a little bit about nutrition and what my nutrition looked like leading into this marathon. And Lilly can probably tell you that I'm a little crazy when it comes to pre-race nutrition because I want to do everything exactly how I did in training, and I will do everything I have to do to make that happen. That was Axel.
That was Axel. I think that's one thing that I have really taken and learned from your running experience and your health and fitness journey, that you want to have the most control over fueling your body and making sure that you're putting forth the best efforts towards success. We did pack, I think 5 meals to get us through those few days of fueling up before the race. That's just his normal chicken and rice for lunch.
Lots of rice
this time. We were able to get those through the airport, which I thought we were going to get some looks for, but
I've done that before.
It's chicken and rice. So you had taken your chicken and rice meals, and then when we were at the store, we ended up getting some, I think, potatoes.
Got some fruit.
Peanut butter and jelly.
Some bread, sourdough bread, since we couldn't take your amazing homemade sourdough with us.
We were running out of space in our bags.
Unfortunately, we could not fit in the homemade sourdough, and I might have cried a little bit. So we got our nutrition dialed in. That was a big thing. Obviously, we want to have very clean carbs. We don't want to eat a lot of processed sugar or fatty foods going into a marathon. You just want stuff that's going to digest really easily, and you want to get in as many carbohydrates as you can, pretty much, is what it boils down to, because you're using that to store glycogen in your muscles, and we want to top off those glycogen stores before race day. So my strategy going into the race was nothing new. I think it's important when you are getting ready to perform in an endurance event that you don't change anything in your nutrition leading up. You want to test this in your training and make sure it's dialed in perfectly. So like I said, didn't change anything, and I took a lot of my meals with me. I had a few meals with chicken and rice, and then I had some just rice made, and that's kind of what I stuck to, and that's what I've been sticking to throughout this entire prep. And one of the biggest things is you don't want to have a lot of fat in your diet, because fat does not digest fast, and it can lead to some stomach discomfort on race day. So we were really making sure we managed low fats, and I wanted to keep my protein a little bit moderate. I don't like to cut it way down like I do fats, because I just think protein is one of the most important things to get in daily. And Axel is interrupting us again, but that's okay. So protein was obviously still moderate. But again, we're focusing mainly on carbs here. So what it looked like is on Thursday, I consumed about 450 grams of carbs. And then on Friday, I was at 655. And Saturday, I was at 566 grams. I'm tracking all this through MyFitnessPal. And as you can see, my peak day of carbohydrates was on Friday. Now, a lot of people would probably think that you want to peak on the day before the race, but I actually find it more beneficial to peak in carbohydrates at least 24 hours in advance. So you give those carbohydrates time to digest, and you can fully store that glycogen in your muscles. So
Not 48 hours.
you want it at least 24 hours in advance.
Oh, I see. Okay, sorry.
So I always try to get it. If my race is on Sunday, I want my peak day to be on Friday. If my race is on Saturday, my peak day is on Thursday. So it's got to be at least 24 hours. When you get inside 24 hours, you want to still keep carbs high, but you don't want them to be too high, because you want your body to be able to digest and fully use those carbs that you're consuming. So that's why we peaked on Friday. And Saturday pre-race, I had 176 grams of carbs, and I'll actually tell you what my pre-race meal was. Now, this pre-race meal has been rehearsed before every single one of my long runs. I found exactly what worked for me, and I encourage you to use your long runs as a test to figure out what works for you. And what works for me might not work for you. So I had sourdough bread. I had approximately 130 grams. It was about 2.5 slices of Trader Joe's sourdough bread. Normally it would be Lilly's homemade bread, but we settled for Trader Joe's. I had just a little bit of peanut butter because I like to get a little bit of protein and fat in, but not too much. And then I had a little bit of drizzled honey on top of that. And then the other 2 slices of bread I covered with grape jelly. This was just organic Trader Joe's grape jelly. And then I had a banana as well. So that was consumed 2 hours out before the race. I wanted to have this meal finished 2 hours before the race to make sure it could fully digest and I wouldn't have any stomach discomfort. Now, when we got closer to the race, about an hour out, I started sipping on my electrolytes and G1M Sport. So I had a scoop and a half of G1M and 2 scoops of electrolytes, which provided me 1,525 milligrams of sodium pre-race. And that's another thing that I didn't touch on the days before is I slowly increased my sodium intake as well. So Thursday, I had 500 milligrams of sodium through electrolytes. Friday, I had 1,350 milligrams of sodium through electrolytes. And Saturday, I had 2,350 milligrams of sodium through electrolytes. So doing kind of the same thing with carbohydrates and just increasing my electrolyte intake each day. So once we got the G1M and electrolytes in pre-race, the only other thing I ate before the race was a Go Gel. And I took that Go Gel 5 minutes before the gun went off on race morning. So I got in another 100 calories and a good amount of carbohydrates. So we were ready to kick off the race. And going into this race, the goal was sub 3:15. I wanted to run a sub 3:15 marathon, and I kind of wanted to keep this goal a little bit more private. The last marathon I ran was in April of 2024, and I made that goal very public. And I actually did some YouTube videos on the prep for that. But this goal, I didn't really put out there a whole lot. I knew what I wanted to run, and I just wanted to kind of do it for myself and not really put it out there.
Were you nervous about that?
No, not really. I wasn't nervous about the goal itself. I knew it was going to take a lot of hard work. Axel is trying to talk to you guys. He's being very rambunctious right now.
Needy.
So yeah, the goal didn't really make me nervous. I would say that it scared me. But I think it's important to set goals that scare you, because if they don't scare you a little bit, then they're probably not hard enough goals.
Yeah, I get that. Was there anything else you wanted to discuss about pre-meal?
No, I think I covered pretty much everything as far as pre-race nutrition goes.
What did you expect going into this race?
I knew I was very fit. I knew that I had done the prep that I needed to do. I hit pretty much all my splits in training, especially on those long runs with marathon pace work in them. Some of my speed works were a little bit off here and there, but it was mainly around the time that I had gotten sick. I actually got sick during this prep, which I'll dive more into in our next episode when I talk all about the training. But I got sick about 6 weeks out in the prep, and it kind of caused a little bit of a setback. I missed a long run and a couple speed workouts, but I knew I was fit. I knew I was ready on a flat course to run 3:15, because that's what I had trained. I mean, obviously where we're from here in Ohio, it's very flat. And all I heard about going into this race was how hilly the course was in Austin. So I expected it to be hard, and it's a marathon, so it's supposed to be hard. Right. We don't train for it to not be hard. We train for it so we can push through the hard parts.
Yeah.
So we got to the start line. Like I said, it was a very short walk. We walked 300 yards and we're at the starting corral. So I was in the A corral, which was the first group to go off. And we got there about 20 minutes before the race, and I got a good stretch in. It was freezing cold.
It was
standing
so cold
there. I think it was 30 degrees on race morning and 15-mile-an-hour winds. Or it felt like 30. So it was a little warmer than 30, but with the wind chill, it was 30 degrees. And I was ready to go. I was dialed in. I felt this was probably the most confident I've ever been at a starting line. When I ran 3:26 at the Glass City Marathon back in April of 2024, I was a little nervous and didn't really know what to expect, as it was my first road marathon. I had ran some trail races before that, but I didn't really have any experience running road marathons. And I knew what to expect this time, and I was ready and prepared to just let it rip and let it all go and show what the last 12 weeks of prep did. So that gun went off at 7:00, and we were off on the race. And the race starts with about a 3-mile section going south on Congress Ave, and we went about 3 miles of a gradual uphill. So the first 3 miles is gradually uphill, and I felt really solid coming out of the gate. I made sure to pull back and not overexert myself early in the race, which is really easy to do in marathons, especially when you get the rush of people coming out of the gate, and there's just so many people screaming, cheering, running next to you. It's very, very easy to run too fast at the beginning. So I made sure that didn't happen, and it kind of helps with Austin being uphill those first 3 miles to be able to control your pace. I knew I needed to run sub 3:15. I needed to be right around a 7:25 minute per mile pace. So I was just making sure that I was hitting all those splits in those first 3 miles and making sure I wasn't beating 7:25 by all that much. So before I dive any further into the race itself, I'll actually go ahead and read off my mile splits for you. So mile 1 was a 7:20, mile 2 was 7:18, mile 3 was 7:14, mile 4 was 7:14, mile 5 7:16, mile 6 7:11, mile 7 7:06, mile 8 7:16, mile 9 7:17, mile 10 7:23, mile 11 7:17, mile 12 7:18, mile 13 7:25, mile 14 7:15. Then we had 7:14, 7:07, 7:10, 7:13, 7:09, 7:06 at mile 20. Mile 21 was 7:11, mile 22 7:05, mile 23 7:12, 24 was 7:08, 25 was 7:12, 26 was 7:09, and the final 0.36 miles was 6:35 pace and 2 minutes and 20 seconds, all leading up to a 3:10 pace for the marathon.
So those mile markers must have been really close to being spot on.
Yeah, so we were pretty consistent overall, but those first 3 miles being that gradual uphill, I was able to maintain a lower effort level and just it was really easy to not run it very fast, which is kind of what you want to start the marathon.
While you were out on the course, was there any entertainment or anything to keep you going?
Not in the first stretch of miles, there was not, but there was a total of, I want to say, like 15 bands and live music playing throughout the race. So it was very cool to see. Nothing crazy in the first 3 miles. Lots of people cheering, though, which was really good and kind of what you expect in the first part of the race. But once we hit mile 3, we turned right, and then we hung another right, and we started coming back into the city. So we had the same 3 miles coming straight back into the city, heading north. And we ran into these sea of spectators at mile 6 and 7. And it was by far the most energetic, fun part of the course. You come across the bridge back into the city, and there's just people lined everywhere.
Yeah, we had, before the race started, planned out where I would be as far as if you needed anything, and then videoing, getting some clips of you running. And I am so glad that I had pre-planned this, one, to expect to know that you were going to see me. And then there was just so many spectators. I ended up, as soon as I saw your corral take off, I ended up getting stuck over by the start line. So I had to wait for a second, maybe even a third corral to go out. And then I was finally able to cross the street. From a spectator's perspective, I only had to travel maybe a half a mile, maybe a block or two. It was not very far to the second part where I could see you at about 5-6 miles in.
Yeah, I think everybody had the same idea because everybody was packing that section of the race. It was by far the most energetic part of a race that I've ever seen, which was really, really cool. And it's very encouraging for runners too. We feed off the energy for sure. Mm-hmm. It's easier to run your marathon pace when there's thousands of spectators than it is when you're running on a dark country road somewhere. So it was definitely more joyful for us to run with all those people. And, so we went out, we kind of worked our way back out of the city, heading west, and we made a turn again and started to come back into the city around mile 8. Mm-hmm. And when we hit mile 8, we hit some absolutely rolling hills. They weren't joking about the hills on this course because you were up and down for quite a few, I think about 2 miles there till about I guess it had been 3 miles because about mile 11, it flattened out a little bit. And then at mile 12, there was a huge hill you had to climb. So Austin's known for having 2 major climbs. There's one at mile 12, and there's one which is brutal. And we'll talk about it a little later at mile 26. But the hill at mile 12, I think you were standing just past the hill,
Right when you come back down.
probably a half mile past the hill.
Yeah.
And I mean, you probably saw some looks in people's eyes after that one, because that was a very hard part of the race. And I think for a lot of people running the marathon, probably a turning point, because that's halfway. And after you climb that, it can be soul sucking after that.
That's what I was just going to say. That is where the half and full do split off. Then that hill is massive.
Yeah. It's no joke. To put it into perspective a little bit, Austin has an elevation gain of 1,174 feet, which is a lot for a road marathon. My first road marathon that I ran back in April was 428 feet of gain. So a huge difference. And after the half marathons runners split off, the course got a lot more it was quiet. It was a lot less crowded, which kind of can be a good thing or a bad thing depending on who you are. It really turns into your race after the 13-mile mark, because really from 13 to mile 21, you really don't see a lot of people, and there's not a lot of spectators either. So you really are in your own head a lot. And I think this is a turning point for a lot of runners, especially on this course, and others as well. When you start getting in your own head and thinking about things and thinking about how far you have to go and this and that, it can get really overwhelming.
Where were you at in your headspace at that point?
I was really good. I've ran a lot of ultras and one other road marathon, and I know in the road marathon that it doesn't matter how you feel at mile 13. What matters is how you feel between miles 18 and 20, because that's when you find out. That's when you find out if it's going to be your day or not. And I was feeling really good at mile 13, 14, and I just wanted to keep a consistent effort. That was my big thing going into this race, is that when I encountered uphills, I wanted my perceived effort to feel the same or be the same as it was when I was running flat. So watching heart rate, watching all those things, and just keeping my effort in check, whether I was running on a flat stretch, an uphill stretch, or a downhill stretch. So when I entered these quiet miles of the race, I was definitely in a good headspace. I was feeling good. I was just focusing on 1 mile at a time and just running the mile that I was in.
Did you mention, did they have aid stations throughout the race?
Oh, yeah. They had, I think, 22 water stops.
Wow.
So this race is heavily supported on water stops. Every single water stop had electrolytes too. BPN was the on-course hydration sponsor. So we had BPN lemon lime electrolytes at all 22 aid stations, which worked out really good for me because that's what I trained with the entire prep. So it was something I'm used to. And that's another thing when you guys are running marathons, it's important to know what kind of nutrition is going to be on the course, because if that certain gel or electrolyte doesn't sit well in your stomach, then maybe you need to look at having your own bottles with your own electrolytes in them.
Or having someone meet you.
Or having...
Some races do drop bags, so something to look into.
Those are generally ultras, but road marathons... But you could have one of your spectators at a road marathon holding a handheld bottle at, mile 12 or 13, and when you run by them, just grab it. Be that simple. But just make sure that if you're going to rely on race day nutrition from the race, that you practice in your training with that nutrition. So almost every race will tell you what's going to be at their aid stations, and it's your job to figure out if that's going to work for you or not.
Do you want to talk a little bit about after the quiet section?
Yeah, so we got 21 miles in, and then the crowd started to pick up again because you're kind of heading back into the city. And this course is kind of unique because the way it's mapped out is you kind of go out of the city and then you turn to come back in. Then you go back out and you come back in. And then you go north and then you're kind of out of it for a little while, but then you eventually come back in. And it's funny because the course is ironically shaped a little bit like Texas. And it's kind of a cool layout.
Are you running? You're not running on the same roads back in that you're running out on, right?
No, you're not.
A couple blocks apart.
Yes. So you kind of, when you run out at mile 13, you kind of go north, and then you go north a while, and then you go to the west, and then you come back into the city on the other side. So you're coming in from the west side. And the crowd started to pick up again at mile 21. I knew when I got to mile 19, everything was still feeling super solid, and I hadn't hit a 7:25 mile in a long time. I was actually smoking 7:25. I was running a lot closer to like 7:14 pace on average. And I went out in 1:36 was the half marathon time. Axel is talking to you all again. He's very restless right now. So
He's playing fetch.
he's trying to play fetch. He doesn't really understand what's going on. But yeah, so I was feeling really good. And, 21 miles in, that's what you want. I knew I was hitting 7:14s. I was smoking my time. And I had a feeling after I hit mile 20 that today was going to be the day for a PR. And it was going to be a huge PR because I wasn't only going to beat it by 10, 11 minutes like I was planning to. I was going to beat it by more than that. And I knew 3:15 was in the bag as long as I didn't cramp up. And thankfully, I had stayed on top of my electrolytes and nutrition. And I didn't have any cramping problems.
One thing that I found really useful with this race, again, from a spectator's perspective, they used some sort of a tracking tool that provided constant updates and projected times. So throughout the entire race, I was getting updates about every 3 miles, what your pace was. They didn't have trackers at every 3 miles they were estimated, but they were really accurate. And that was a really helpful tool from a spectator's perspective on knowing when you were going to be arriving. And when I continued to watch, I knew shortly after maybe the halfway mark, I was like, wow, he is really pushing it. Based on these estimated times, I think he is definitely going to break 3:15, if not 3:10.
Yeah, so like I said, I ran the first half in 1:36, and to run a effective marathon, I always want a negative split. And what negative splitting means is running the second half faster than the first half. So when I went out in 1:36 and I was still feeling good, I knew that if I negative split, there's no doubt I'm hitting 3:15. And like I said, when I got to mile 20 and 21, I was right on track and feeling really good. So I knew it was probably going to be my day. Didn't cramp up in those final miles, thankfully. Still stayed on top of electrolytes and nutrition.
Do you want to talk about what you took during the race as far as nutrition?
So I had done this in all of my long runs, again, practicing how we're going to race. And I just took a BPN Go Gel every half hour. So
What was that, about 6 then?
Yes.
Did
6.
you take
and
caffeinated one?
I did take one caffeinated one at the 2-hour mark. I took a I took a caffeinated gel at the 2.5-hour mark because I wanted that to kick in before the end of the race, obviously. And the last gel I took was technically supposed to be at hour 3, and I ended up taking it at like 2:45, 2:50. So I made sure it had time to actually benefit me rather than taking it so close to the end of the race.
Yeah.
Especially when I knew I was going to come in closer to 3:10 than 3:15. So that was what my in-race nutrition looked like. And like I said, I took that last gel about 2:45, and we were closing in at the end of the race. I was still feeling really good. This is kind of the point where I start to empty out the tank a little bit, and I want to, my goal is to cross the finish line with pretty much nothing left to give. And I got to mile 23, 24, still feeling really good. When I got to 24, I'm like, here we go. Like, this is it. And then I hit mile 25, and there was a lot of people again cheering. screaming for people to finish, just being super encouraging. This race was full of that, full of encouragement. Even the runners themselves, I talked to so many of them out there on the course and ran with so many of them, and they were just super encouraging. And I was just absolutely letting it out. And then we got to mile 26, and there was a ginormous hill. It was the biggest hill of the race by far. If you've ran Austin before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It is a sheer climb for a decent little stretch. But when you crest the top of that hill, you can kind of see where you turn left to go to the finish line. So once you get to the top, it's like a full sprint to the finish. And I don't know what pace I ran at, but I was literally just sprinting after the top of that hill.
What were you thinking at that point?
Well, I knew that I was pushing 310, and I thought maybe that I was going to finish in sub 310. And I ended up crossing at 3 hours, 10 minutes, and 16 seconds. So absolutely blew away my goal, which, like I said, going in, I knew it was going to be a tough goal, but I knew I was prepared. And I just didn't know what the hills would bring. And it turns out all of those ultras prepared me for some of those hills that I had to tackle during the race.
He wants to play again. Yeah, I was sitting there watching the updated tracker, trying to get the best estimated time. There were so many people at the finish line, and you actually couldn't get down to the finish line. I think they had some sort of VIP pass program to be able to get close. We unfortunately did not have access up there, so where I was at was a little bit of a ways back, and there were little shops that the finish line was in front of, so I ended up getting onto like an outdoor seating patio and was able to snag a seat up there and hang out while you were wrapping up the race. There were so many people there. I thankfully was able to capture you crossing the finish line, and I thought that was really neat to witness, as well as many others crossing the finish line.
Yeah, there was so much crowd support at this race, and I was very thankful for all of that. It's something I don't see running. I mean, mainly I'm on trails running ultras, so I still love the road marathon, and I love the crowd energy that they bring.
I think this one specifically was definitely the biggest supported race, and I can see why it's so well known.
Yeah, if you haven't ran the Austin, Texas Marathon before, I highly suggest you get out there to run it, because it was legitimately probably one of the coolest races I've ever ran. And just having all those people in that town, and that town is just, we enjoyed it so much. We had an awesome weekend. So after the race was over, we kind of struggled for about 15 minutes figuring out how to meet up. I knew where you were at, and you knew where I was, but getting to each other was somewhat difficult.
I think I was probably like 3 blocks away from where you were at. So they have the finish line kind of, again, boarded off. You can't access it. So what the spectators have to do is you have to walk out and around and down about 3 blocks in order to meet up with your runner. So it does take a little while, definitely to get to you, but it's well worth it. I actually didn't get to take many post-race pictures down there. The backdrops were also all blocked off where the runners were. So we did end up getting some pictures at the BPN booth, which was accessible to the spectators. And then there was live music, games, food, and lots of people.
Yeah, once we met up, it was a really cool moment we had together. I think we were both a little bit shocked at what had happened. I knew I was fit enough to run 3:15. I didn't know I was fit enough to run 3:10 on a hilly course. So that was very exciting, and the emotions were pretty high. I may have shed a few tears at the finish line, and that happens at majority of races, just because I think back to, I just kind of think back to where I came from and what that looks like. So once we met up, we went back to the hotel and got changed, and we got our rental car, and we headed to have a post-race meal. And as many people from Austin know, a place called Terry Black's. It's a very well-known barbecue place, and it comes very highly rated to from everybody in Austin.
Yeah, we knew that Terry Black's was definitely on our go-to post-race meal to-do list, and it was totally well worth it. We actually got there at a really decent time. We did not have much of a line at all when we got there, and then by the time we were finishing eating and trying to leave, there was a massive line. It was all the way out to the parking lot.
Yeah, it was some of the best food I've had in a long time. Definitely the best barbecue I've had.
It was so good.
We got the brisket.
Mm-hmm. Pork ribs.
Pork ribs. The mac and cheese was unreal.
Yep. It was great.
And we got some
cream corn.
And that was pretty much it. It was super good. Very good meal to have after a 26.2 mile effort.
If you are in Austin, I would put it on your to-do list as must-stop place.
If you're in Austin, you have to go there.
It's very good.
No questions asked. You got to go to Terry Black's Barbecue.
Anything else you wanted to add about the race?
No, that pretty much covers the race.
All right. We did have a very busy day after the end of the race. We actually ended up flying back home to Ohio post-race, so I can't even imagine how tired Hunter was. And then when our flight was delayed, that was a whole dilemma in itself. But we made it back eventually, got the rental car taken back, and yeah, I'm really proud of you. I think this race was a testament that you have worked very hard and you're capable of anything you can put your mind to. So next, I wanted to ask a couple questions. I had like a little Q&A session for you. Talking about what we just talked about, if you had to rate Terry Black's Barbecue, what would you rate it, 1 through 10?
I mean, it's definitely the best barbecue I've ever had. But that doesn't take much coming from Ohio. So I'm going to rate it like a 9 probably.
I think I would give it like a 9.8. I can't think of anything bad about it aside from possibly waiting in a line.
There's nothing I hated about it.
It was good. Moving into the next question, I had, what was the most meaningful part of this race to you?
Oh, geez. I think the most meaningful part was all the runners, like having 23,000 people plus tackling that race from the 5K. They had a 5K, half marathon, and marathon. I think the most memorable part was just all the people there gathered to do the same thing, essentially. And it was to push themselves to new levels or just do something very difficult and challenging. Because I've always said that if you want to do extraordinary things and accomplish big goals, that you have to surround yourself with the right people, and you want to find the people that kind of align with your ideas and your goals. And having everybody there was just super inspirational. And after the race was over, it just made me want to get back to work instantly on my goals and just continue to push harder and harder.
Yeah, I going off of that, think that my most meaningful memory or most memorable thought from this race was not only seeing you crush your goal or exceed your goal, but you crushed it. And I think that was just a testament to how hard you have worked and that you truly can do anything that you can put your mind to, no matter how people describe the course and tell you how hard it's going to be. I think you can define your own mental space. If you could change one thing about our trip, what would you change?
I don't know if I would change much, to be honest. I thought everything went pretty good. It was very convenient staying right next to the start line, that's for sure. But I don't know. I really enjoyed everything.
There was one thing that I thought about that we could improve upon or consider doing in the future would be staying there an extra day, not rushing home right after the race and kind of getting another day to explore Austin.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Unfortunately, having to go back to work, and knowing we have more race trips later in the year that we're trying to save some vacation days for. But yeah, if having the ability to stay an extra day would have definitely been fun. Just having another day to, have a nice dinner, try some more local food and whatnot, would definitely be fun. So yeah, I would definitely get behind that idea.
And lastly, I had one more question. If you had to describe this race or this prep, your entire experience throughout this Austin Marathon, in one word or one statement, how would you describe this Austin Marathon series?
Grateful, because I'm grateful to have an able body and be able to do this every day. There's a lot of people that wish they could run. There's a lot of people that wish they could exercise and work out and do all these things. And I'm just grateful that I am able to do it. I think a lot of us take working out, fitness for granted. And some of us put off working out and being healthy in general. And I think it's a mistake, because there's a lot of people that wish they could do it. So if you are able, you should definitely use those abilities and push yourself, because you never know what you might unlock mentally. And I just think if you're able, you should just do.
I think that was really good. I think that is the last of my questions. Did you have anything to add?
I don't think I had anything necessarily to add. I have a question for you, actually.
Yeah.
Are you going to run the Austin Marathon next year?
Oh, we'll consider it. I've never ran a marathon. I have done one half.
And a few 10Ks.
And a few 10Ks and 5Ks. I think I would consider it. I think that the crowd support would definitely get me through. Would you consider being a spectator for the race?
Not in 2026, because I've already signed up to run it again.
Oh, dang.
So we're going back to Austin next year.
A sneak peek for next year.
But yeah, that's pretty much going to wrap up our podcast, and just sharing with you guys our race weekend and our entire experience. Axel is very talkative tonight. He's not settled down since we started podcasting. So we just had the most incredible weekend. Honestly, the energy was just unreal. There was good vibes everywhere. The people of Austin are awesome, and we just loved it there. The city's awesome. There's a lot to do, a lot to see. People everywhere, very friendly people, and we just enjoyed the heck out of it.
I'm thankful to share this experience with you. I'm, again, as always, very proud of you and all the other runners out there. It was such a bigger part to be a part of, or a bigger thing to be a part of. And again, we really did enjoy being in Austin and can't wait to go back next year.
Yeah. So some of you might be wondering what's next, because it seems like whenever we get done with a big goal, it's always the what's next thing. And some of you probably have seen on Facebook or Instagram that I am running the Leadville 100 in August, taking place in Leadville, Colorado. It's one of the most historic and prestigious 100s in the country. And on August 16th and 17th, we will be out there running that. So we're going to just slowly ease back into training for that. And that's what we got next. We have a couple training races in the build up to Leadville. So we have the Cleveland Marathon on May 18th and the Mohican 50-mile trail race on May 31st. So that's what we got coming up. So I just want to thank you guys for tuning into this episode, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one.
Be sure to check out the link in the show notes.
We will have our fundraising link for Leadville. We are actually running this race with the Live Strong charity. I'm glad you mentioned this. I almost forgot about it.
Yeah.
But we are running this race with Live Strong. So we are raising money to help those people who have been or will be affected by cancer. I'm running this
Supporting
race.
cancer research.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am running this race in honor of my grandfather, Don Foltz Sr., who passed away from cancer in 2003. He was an avid runner, and he's missed dearly by a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
So if you feel like heading over to that link, you can check it out. Like Lily said, it'll be in the show notes. And we just want to thank you guys for tuning into this podcast. And we will see you guys in the next episode.
See ya.